Magnuson barges in at a very sensitive moment, and to be quite honest, really risks being knocked in the head with the crowbar. We hear the dreadful news that the Combine are approaching with large numbers of Striders in an attempt to destroy the rocket. Magnuson informs us that he has created a weapon which will hopefully turn the tables against the extremely tough Striders. He names this weapon the Magnuson device, after himself, though he slyly tries to convince us that it was his underlings that insisted upon the name. In describing the device, notice Dr. Magnuson uses the word cleverer. I told you in the Half-Life 2 commentary that cleverer was a real word. See? Dr. Magnuson knows. Magnuson and Uriah give us a short training in the use of the device with a decommissioned Strider as a target. Doesn't seem too terribly difficult, though Magnuson is quick to point out that it will be much more difficult while being shot at. Oh, you don't say, Doctor. I would not have guessed, considering I've spent most of the past several weeks of my life doing almost nothing else besides being shot at. A friendly Resistance member upgrades our car once again, altering the radar so that it will pick up Striders, and adding a rack for the Magnusons on the back. Notice that the man does indeed refer to the weapons as Magnuson, so the name must have indeed stuck, or else Dr. Magnuson threatened the people of White Forest if they did not use the name. I think the latter seems the most likely.
No need to thank me.
Well, let me tell you something. There is nothing I dislike more in a video game than a boss battle. I like a little linearity in my game like most people. Most modern video games are a story, with a beginning, a middle, and an end, and like all stories there's a gradual build-up of pace throughout the game until a climactic conclusion is reached. Now a climactic event is fine, even necessary, but a boss battle? It's rather extremely antiquated. Way back in the day on your NES, it may have been fine to reach the end of Super Mario Bros. And defeat Bowser by plunging him into a lake of fire, but today that's a very outdated concept in my opinion. Now you're probably wondering what distinguishes a boss battle from a climax. A boss battle usually involves, defeating a single, extremely strong foe before further progression through the game is allowed, whereas a climax is simply a culmination of the story in action. The original Half-Life did indeed end with a boss battle, the Nearlanth, but that was clear back in 1998, and games in general were less mature than they are now. Half-Life 2 most certainly did not end with a boss battle. For me, the climactic event in that story was the defeat of the Combine forces at the gates of the Citadel near the horse statue. The later events in the Citadel itself were merely the further progression and then the ending of the story. The climax of that game seemed to me almost too far away from the ending. Episode 1 was kind of borderline, as at the very end of the train station you did have to fight a Strider, which was the only such creature to appear in that episode, and this could possibly be considered a boss battle. With Episode 2, however, I think that everything was done really spot on, from the timing of the climax to the amount of action. The final battle against the Striders and Hunters to me seemed to be the perfect pinnacle of the game, and it did so without being stereotypical, or perhaps even more importantly, predictable. The final battle takes place in what must be the largest open area we have traversed yet. The different locations between the sawmill and the base are a maze of narrow roadways which offer us a variety of different routes to go from place to place. Because of the environment being constructed in this way, the final battle plays out in such a way that the solution will be different every time for every player. You have to make a large variety of choices in a very short amount of time on how you will fight the incoming Combine, and the choices that you do make in turn directly affect how the Combine will respond to you. Again, I would like to state that all of this defeats predictability almost completely. The battle plays out so seamlessly that you would almost think that it is all scripted. Man, you guys really got this one right. Now, don't think I'm failing to comment on how exciting this battle is. The pace is absolutely frantic. I know the first time I played this I could barely hang on to my mouse, my hands were sweating so badly. I was actually shaking and my heart was racing as the Striders were approaching the base and that blasted alarm was going off. I was in a panic thinking that at any moment one of the Striders would destroy the rocket with their focused energy weapon and the game would tell me I had failed. The action drew me in so completely that I actually felt real fear, and I don't think that any of us could ask for a more enjoyable experience than that.
Attention! Attention!
Dr. Magnuson is forced to eat his socks and give a suitable amount of thanks for what we accomplished, though he tends to want to place an undue amount of the results upon the Magnuson devices themselves.
We're gonna get a hug.
I like very much when Dr. Kleiner states that there's a payload anomaly of 8 pounds in the rocket, given the fact that earlier we saw Lamar climbing into the nose cone of the rocket. Now, I love Dr. Kleiner, and I know he cares a great deal for that creature, but part of me feels that outer space may actually be the best place for her. As Gordon says nothing to Kleiner, it seems obvious to me that he feels exactly the same way. Well, great minds think alike. For all of our hard work, we are rewarded by being allowed to finally launch the rocket. Now, if you don't press the button expeditiously enough, Dr. Magnuson gets really irritated.
Oh, for God's sake, it's only a button. Just press it, that's all I ask.
Oh, come on, Magnuson. I know you've been waiting 10 years for this, but give me a moment to take it all in. This is my moment of victory. After we launch the rocket, we head outside to watch, hopefully, the final collapse of the portal. Eli stops us for a moment in the doorway to talk to us and give us his opinion about the meaning of the G-Man's mysterious statement. He thanks Gordon for all of the hard work he has done for him, for Alex, and for all of humanity. He then tells Gordon that he could not be prouder of him if he were his own son. Now, you're going to think this is absurd, but I was actually very moved by this statement. Eli is such a kind person, and to some extent he is a bit of a father figure to Gordon, and to hear him express these sentiments, well, frankly, it means a lot. And on top of all this, the satellite did indeed do the trick, and the portal has been neutralized. I think the day's ended rather well for Gordon after all.
You did it, Gordon! We sure as hell did.
As I've been typing out the notes for this commentary, I've actually been dreading a bit what I was going to say at the end. I've only played through the sequence twice. The first time I played it, and then once more to record it, as I actually do not enjoy watching this. Valve hinted long before the release of Episode 2 that a major character may perish in this installment, but I was so engrossed in the game up to this point that this thought did not even occur to me. So, to say the least, I was utterly shocked by what happened. I never expected that a game would make me feel this way, but as I've often stated, video games are no longer just games. They are a sensory immersion, a complete narrative experience that, if implemented flawlessly, draws you inexorably inward and does not easily let you go. And I do think this scene was implemented flawlessly. Eli's death is an absolutely gut-wrenching act by Robert Guillaume and Merle Dandridge. Now, I know the artistic temperament rather well, and speaking as someone who knows how to feel a lot, both good and bad, it seems to me that it could not have been an easy experience for either of them to record this. What I find the most painful here is not Eli's death in itself, but as the mature advisor is picking Eli up from the floor with its insect-like prosthetic limbs, he tells Alex that he loves her, and then repeatedly tells her to look away. Eli knows precisely what is going to happen, yet his only concern is that his daughter not be traumatized by his horrific death. Now, if that doesn't tear you apart, then I do not know what would. To have Eli taken away from us so suddenly and so brutally, especially right after he compared us to his own son, and after his words with Alex concerning her mother, is just like a knife right through the heart. This is a terrible reminder that sometimes the good guys do not finish first, and the ending is not always happy. Yet the story is not over yet, and some good may still come of this. Now, you made me tear up when I played through this, Merle Dandridge, so you owe me a picture of yourself, autographed by Alex Vance. So I just finished watching Cowboy Bebop, every episode through from beginning to end, and just discovered the other night that Spike dies. He dies at the end. Couldn't believe it. So first it's Eli, now Spike. God, who's next? The weighted companion cube.